Cardiac disease, coronary artery disease, obesity, climate change, pollution. What do all of these things have in common? What they have in common is the way that we choose to feed ourselves. What we eat and the way that we produce it has effects that most of us never even consider. Within the scientific community, there is an overwhelming base of documented evidence that a whole food, plant-based diet improves overall health and can alleviate many diseases. Today, we're going to talk about health and environmental issues caused by the way we produce food and how we can change to alleviate them. So let's start by talking about the issues. Preventable diseases and illnesses are the top killers of people in America. According to the CDC, heart disease is the #1 cause of death for men and women in America. Approximately 647,000 Americans die each year of cardiac disease. That is 25% of overall deaths in America each year. Between healthcare services, medications, and lost productivity, cardiac disease costs America over $219 billion every year. Another preventable health issue that affects millions of Americans is coronary artery disease. Approximately 18.2 million adults over the age of 20 are affected by this disease. That's almost 3 times the population of Tennessee. And now I have a picture. This is what cardiovascular disease does to your veins. This is atherosclerosis. It's the narrowing of your vein, which is what causes blood clots.
We don't want to eat burgers.
We don't want to eat,
sugar.
Lots of meat. So, some of the risk factors of cardiovascular disease are obesity, poor diet, bad habits like smoking, and it can be prevented by a good diet and healthy exercise. Other preventable diseases caused by poor diet and that are also comorbidities for cardiac disease are obesity, diabetes, and hyperlipidemia or high cholesterol. Less than 10% of adults and children eat the recommended amount of vegetables each day, and less than 10% of adults and less than 40% of children eat the recommended amount of fruit each day. Not only is human health affected by what we eat and how we produce it, but the health of our environment is also greatly affected. One of the top debated but extremely important issues in our world today is climate change. According to PETA, animal agriculture is responsible for more greenhouse gases than all of the world's transportation combined. Another problem is poor use of natural resources. Desertification is the process by which fertile land becomes desert, typically resulting from drought, deforestation, and inappropriate agriculture practices. And according to the Oxford Dictionary, nearly 20% of the world's lands are threatened with desertification. Even in America, places like California are under constant threat of drought. A single cow that's being raised to produce milk can drink between 50 and 100 gallons of water per day. It takes 683 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of milk. And for meat production, it takes over 2,400 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of meat, compared to only 244 gallons to produce 1 pound of tofu. We like that, don't we? Runoff waste from factory farms is also one of the leading causes of pollution in lakes and rivers. Another issue with animal agriculture is that it takes an incredibly large amount of land. It takes 20 times more land to feed a meat consumer versus a vegetarian. It takes 10 pounds of grain to feed a cow to produce just 1 pound of beef. In the U.S., 56 million acres of land is used just to produce plants to feed livestock. That's not including the land that's used to farm the livestock themselves. Over 4 million acres are used to produce plants that feed humans. Only 4 million acres is used to produce plants that feed humans. Another startling fact is that nearly 90% of the world's rainforests that have been destroyed since 1970 are being used to graze livestock. Here's a picture of the deforestation of the rainforest.
I want to see it.
See it? Isn't that sad? Those trees are all dead.
Not those trees.
No, we want all the trees to look like that.
Forever.
Forever. Now let's talk about the solutions to these problems and the benefits that will result from them. I believe that the number one solution to these problems is for people to adopt a whole food, plant-based diet. A plant-based diet is shown in many scientific studies to improve overall health and decrease risk of morbidities that lead to cardiac disease. According to a study done by the Journal of the American Heart Association, plant-based diets are associated with a lower risk of cardiovascular disease mortality, and all-cause mortality in the general population of middle-aged adults. In this study, a high adherence to a healthy plant-based diet index was associated with a 19% lower risk of cardiovascular disease mortality and all-cause mortality. Diets higher in plant foods and lower in animal foods were associated with a lower risk of cardiovascular morbidity and mortality in the general population. Vegetarian diets have been associated with lower risk of cardiovascular risk factors such as obesity, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and ischemic heart diseases. There's a doctor, Dr. Brooke Goldner, a highly respected and well-known physician, and she's a leader in the study and push for the move towards plant-based diets. Dr. Goldner was diagnosed with lupus at the age of 16. She underwent years of treatments and therapy simply just to survive. She underwent years of chemotherapy, had stage 4 kidney disease, many strokes, and even went through 3 years of genetic research at Carnegie Mellon. She went to medical school, was the lead resident, and still said that all she ever learned never helped her improve her health. She had to rely on medications just to survive. After struggling with sickness for 12 years, she finally decided to adopt a plant-based diet. And 3 months after she adopted a plant-based diet, her lupus was gone. She's been illness-free for 15 years now and has dedicated her life to helping others find freedom from illnesses that she now has. There are also many scientific studies that show a move towards a plant-based diet will significantly improve our planet and the environment. In a study done by the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, if society moved to a plant-based diet, the negative impact that farming and agriculture would have on the planet would decrease by 80%. If we spent more resources growing sustainably harvested crops for human consumption rather than focusing on animal agriculture, the world's greenhouse gas emissions, pollution levels, deforestation, and desertification would significantly decrease and possibly even come to a halt. Plant-based diets could also greatly decrease the world's water consumption. One study estimated that if the U.S. cut animal product consumption even by half, our food production would require 37% less water. Another amazing benefit of this dietary change would be that there would be far less starving people in the world. According to a Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, almost 2/3 of all soybeans, maize, barley, and about 1/3 of all grains are used as feed for animals. Imagine all the people that could be fed if those resources were allocated to feeding humans rather than raising meat for consumption. In conclusion, overall research supports that society moving towards a plant-based diet is beneficial in a multitude of ways, both for human health and for our planet. Now, we have seen the scientific facts regarding the benefits of a plant-based diet, and I hope you've learned some truths about the effects our dietary choices have on the world as a whole, and I would challenge you to consider moving towards a plant-based diet lifestyle for your health and the health of the world.